Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah. We are on ayah number 266. قال الله تعالى: أيود أحدكم أن تكون له جنة من نخيل وأعناب تجري من تحتها الأنهار له فيها من كل الثمرات وأصابه الكبر وله ذرية ضعفاء فأصابها إعصار فيه نار فاحترقت كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. Okay, let's take some key vocabulary here. Again, in this ayah, there is a parable being struck and a question being asked. Ayawaddu, from wadda yawaddu, to like or to love. Does one of you love that he should have a jannah? We spoke about this before. From nakhil, these are date palm trees. Wa a'nab, these are grapes, plural of anab. Anhar, plural of nahar, meaning rivers, running underneath. So this running underneath, which is min tahtiha, does not mean underneath the garden. That would not make sense. It simply means running on the ground, underneath the leaves of the trees. And this has min kulli thamarat, all types of fruits. Wa asabahu al-kibr, kibr meaning old age, afflicts him. Walahu, and he has dhurriya. This means children or progeny. Du'afa, plural of da'if, meaning weak. Weak children who are unable to, of course, earn for themselves. So they are dependent on this man. Except this man has now grown old and he is unable to work as he used to work during his young age and middle age. However, it gets worse. An i'sar afflicts it, which means a strong wind, something like a storm or a whirlwind. It's basically a strong wind, not just a breeze. In this wind there is fire. As for exactly how this fire manifests, this could be in various ways, Allah knows best. Maybe the wind causes something to catch fire, perhaps it is lightning, because that also burns. It could be all sorts of things, Allah knows best. The point is, fire is involved. So we have wind and fire. And what happens? فَاحْتَرَقَتْ, it burns. So it burns the garden. كَذَلِكَ, just like this, meaning just like what you heard right now, Allah makes plain to you His ayat, the signs. Signs of what? Signs of His existence, of His ability, of His authority, all of that. لَعَلَّكُمْ, so that you may تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, give fikr, which means thought, or you can say so that you may reflect, meaning to say, do not just read these ayat of the Quran, actually think about what exactly is going on and how it affects you. Okay, so obviously this is a parable. We need to explain the parable and what symbolizes what. Now, just notice an interesting point. Allah Jalla wa Ala in this ayah does not say this is a parable. He does not use the word mathal or words to that effect. He simply gives a scenario. But we say he is actually striking a parable because of indications. Because this particular scenario about the fire afflicting your garden did not happen to anybody physically. So it has to be a parable being struck. The thing you use to give the example is called the al-mushabbah bihi. And the thing being made an example out of is the al-mushabbah. So this parable is an interesting one. The garden with all the fruits and the grapes and everything represents his charity that he gives. And the old age with the children who are young and dependent on him represents his state where he needs his garden. He needs it for himself and his children. In other words, he needs his good deeds. He's in desperate need of it. The violent wind with the fire in it represents the man, when he reminds others of what he gave them and seeks to get his one-up over them. And the other as well, when he tells other people what he gave to fulan, thus embarrassing him or otherwise creating some other type of harm. So this is that violent whirlwind which completely ruins the garden. So this man wal adha completely ruins your charity at the time when you most need the reward. Now, some have also said that this represents the one who shows off, and that if you do your deeds showing off, it completely nullifies your good deeds? Maybe, but we could argue back by saying that the one who shows off, he does not have any good deeds in the first place to begin with, because it is rejected from the very beginning and not recorded as a good deed. In fact, it's recorded as an instance of shirk. A little bit of showing off is minor shirk, but definitely this parable is for the man and other. In Al-Bukhari, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he was not sure about what this parable is symbolizing, and he asked his companions. They said Allah knows best, and Umar said, either say we know or we do not know. And he responded like this because saying Allah knows best could imply that they do have some idea, but they are too afraid to speak out lest it might be wrong. So this created some doubt in Umar's mind. Anyhow, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he said, I have some idea about this. And Umar said, oh, my nephew, speak out and do not belittle yourself. He said, this parable is about some amal, works. Umar asked, what type of works? And Ibn Abbas replied, a man works righteousness, then the shaitan comes to him, and he commits ma'asi, disobedience, and this ruins his righteous works. So Ibn Abbas had this idea of it being general righteous works and general evil works. Well, your evil works does not wipe out your righteous works. The other way around is true, but evil does not cancel out righteous work, because Allah has skewed this system in our favor. So if you, for example, are to give charity, then the very next minute you drink alcohol. The alcohol will not nullify your charity or any other good deed for that matter, except in the case of man and other after giving charity, that will nullify it. So that's an exception to the case. Unless Ibn Abbas meant that the person after performing righteous works is affected by the shaitan and becomes a murtad. Now that would of course nullify all your righteous works if you die upon the state of ridda. But generally speaking, righteous works does not nullify evil works, as we have no evidence of that. As for this ayah, you can clearly tell it's in the context of man and other. So to reflect on this ayah, we may again take that Allah strikes forth parables, and that this is an effective teaching technique. You use something which is physical, like a garden, to explain something which is not physical and cannot be seen, such as reward, and your reward being nullified. You cannot actually see this and touch it. It's not tangible, whereas a garden is tangible. So use something which can be seen and felt, something which is tangible, to explain that which is a little further away from the people's minds. And we take that man and other will make your sadaqah batil, as we talked before. And we also take the importance of tafakkur, these ayat of Allah Jalla wa Ala, whether they be ayat shar'iyah, as in these ayat of the Quran, or whether they be ayat kawniyah, the universal signs of nature. Reflect and ponder over these ayat. They will increase you in your iman. And like we said before, to understand the Quran, you need to understand what the words mean. You need the tafsir or the dictionary for that. You need to understand what the words refer to, if that is applicable. For that, you need the tafsir. You cannot make this up yourself. And the third part is something which you have more freedom to do. Tafakkur. Reflect and think and ponder over the ayat of the Quran. It will enhance your understanding as long as the first two steps have been taken. The third step should not be taken unless you've taken the first two steps. Otherwise, your tafakkur is getting off on the wrong foot and will lead you to wrong ideas. Ayah 267. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم ومما أخرجنا لكم من الأرض ولا تيمموا الخبيث منه تنفقون ولستم بآخذيه إلا أن تغمضوا فيه واعلموا أن الله غني حميد. Again we have the call, O you who believe, أنفقوا, spend, min, from, طيبات, the good things, ما كسبتم, of what you have earned. meaning from your actions. And that which we have akhrajna, brought out from the earth. So this would be crops and fruits and so on. وَلَا تَيَمَّمُوا. This word tayammama, yatayammamu, means to intend. Do not intend the khabith. This means haram earnings, or just wealth which is haram in and of itself, like pork, or wealth which you are going to get rid of anyway, and you decide in the end to give it in charity, so it's not wealth that you love. Or for example, if a poor person owes you £1,000, and it so happens that you have to give zakah of, let's say, £1,000, and you say to the poor person, keep the £1,000, it will be my zakah to you. That is not allowed, because you're giving away from the khabith. Rather, the £1,000 needs to come in your possession, and then you give away whatever you need to give away. He says, and you will not akhidhihi, take it, illa except an tughmidu fi. Aghmada, yughmidu. It is when you close your eyes. Aghmada aynayhi. He closed his eyes. So this means to say, when you take something closing your eyes, it means you hate to take it. Similar to if you were to pinch your nose whilst eating something because it tastes so horrible. And he ends with two of his names. Ghani, spoke about this before, and Hamid from Hamada. Hamd is to describe someone with positive characteristics with love and affection. And so Hamid means the one who is praised. So reflecting on this ayah, we may take the virtue of Iman as we did before. Whenever Allah Jalla wa Ala calls out, O you who believe, He's calling you with the most virtuous title that can be given to you. The title of Iman. There's nothing better than this. No royal title can touch the title of Iman. Your royalty ends at the grave, whereas your Iman is forever. We find the order given to spend in charity out of the halal earnings, tayyibat, not haram earnings. And in this you could even find evidence, according to the generality of this ayah, that you give charity from your trade goods. Now if you do have haram earnings, let's say typically from interest, then yes, you can give it away in charity, because at least some people will be benefited by it. But would you have the reward? Well, we say, no, you will not have the reward for the charity per se, but if this is part of your repentance, then you will have the reward of repentance. Now, according to the generality of this ayah, it would appear that you give the zakah on everything that grows from the ground in your field. Well, we do not want to go into the discussion of zakah here, but we need the sunnah, and the sunnah gives us the details as to what type of crops the zakah is due on and how much zakah is due, because this ayah does not give us the details. And indeed, some scholars have used this ayah to say that zakah is due on absolutely everything which comes out from the ground. And that is not the correct opinion to hold on this matter. We notice an interesting linguistic point. He says, spend from the good things which you have earnt, and then he says, and from that which we have brought forth from the earth. So the crops coming forth from the earth, he links it to himself, not to the humans. And this is clear enough, because humans can sow the seed, but that's about it. The actual growth is much more of a natural phenomena, which is much more in the hands of Allah Jalla wa Ala, completely out of our control. Whereas with trade, you have much more control. We take also that you are not to give the zakah or charity from the wealth which is of a lower quality, or that which your heart is not attached to, or that wealth which is haram, either haram per se or haram from its earning. Nowadays, for most people, their goodly wealth would be in their bank account, because that's the wealth, the money, which people's hearts are attached to. So if you have some clothing which is worn out and bust out, you're going to throw it away, then you change your mind and decide to give it to somebody in charity. This is the khabith of your wealth, because you yourself would not accept this bust up clothing, except if you were to close your eyes and take it reluctantly. So the same way, you are not to give it to others. You only give the type of wealth in charity which you yourself would happily take. And we also take the two names of Allah. He is rich and free of needs, and at the same time He is praiseworthy, or one who is praised. As for humans, not every rich human is worthy of praise. You can have some humans who are rich but stingy or mean-spirited. So they are rich, but not worthy of praise. However, with Allah, He is worthy of praise as well as being completely rich and free of needs. Ayah 268. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. This ayah is fairly clear. الشيطان, we have spoken about this keyword before. يعدكم, وعد يعد, to promise. He promises you faqr, which is poverty. So he's going to tell you, oh, if you give in charity, you will become poor. So do not give in charity. These are the thoughts of shaitan. Whereas we know that charity only increases your wealth and blesses your wealth. And he orders you, يأمركم بالفحشاء. Now, fahsha is everything which is excessively ugly. Very often it refers to fornication and acts similar to that. But in this context, it refers to stinginess, because stinginess is also excessively ugly. And we are talking in the financial context here. So it would be bukhl, stinginess, meaning do not give in charity, be stingy. Hoard up your wealth. Whereas Allah promises you maghfirah, forgiveness, minhu, from Him, wa fadl, grace. So here it refers to opposite of poverty. If you give in charity, you will not be thrown into poverty. You'll be thrown into richness and contentment. And Allah is wasi', expansive in all His goodly attributes, including the fact that He has all riches and can enrich you. And He is alim, He is knowledgeable of everything. So to pick up some points of benefits from this ayah, we can immediately take that if some feeling of stinginess comes into your mind, this idea that giving charity is going to decrease your wealth and you will have nothing left, then you need to know this is from shaitan. As long as you're giving charity on reasonable basis, not too little, not too much, but reasonable in accordance with your means, then this is what will produce blessing and barakah in your wealth. And ignore all other thoughts about becoming poor and in need. When you know that Allah is wasi', He is expansive, and He is expansive in His wealth and the treasures of the heavens and the earth, and He can enrich you therefrom, then you have no need to worry. And the promise of Allah Jalla wa Ala is true. He is the truest in speech, and He promises us forgiveness from our charity and our good works, and He promises us fadl, from His grace, that He will enrich us from His infinite wealth. So give in charity and give regularly in charity. It is your regular actions which matter, not your one-hit wonders. We find that stinginess is from shaitan. We notice how He says maghfirah minhu, from Him. We said before that the value of the gift depends on the value of the giver, and there is nothing greater than Allah, so the gift of Allah therefore is the greatest of all gifts. We may take that when we give charity, we should have in mind that through this charity Allah Jalla wa Ala will forgive our sins and enrich us and put blessing in our wealth. Have that in mind as you give charity, and get rid of any negative thoughts. We also take the two names of Allah, Wasi' and Alim, names we have spoken about before. Ayah 269, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. He gives al-hikmah to whomsoever He wills, and whoever is granted al-hikmah, then he is granted much goodness. And none will make yadhakkar from Baqarah. It's meant to be idh takara, but it's been changed to idh dhakara because it's easier on the tongue, which means to remember or take admonition. No one takes admonition except the ulul, the people of albab. That's the plural of lub, which means understanding. As for the word hikmah, and firstly, generally, hikmah means to put something in its proper place for a praiseworthy end. This is the general concept of al-hikmah. As for in this particular context, it means knowledge of this deen and its proper understanding and application. So reflecting on this ayah, obviously the main lesson is that we need to try to seek hikmah, which is understanding of this deen and knowledge of this deen and being able to apply this deen and its knowledge in various particular circumstances that we find ourselves in. For example, you may have knowledge on riba, and then you come across a certain business proposal. You need to be sure that this business proposal is not a ribawi proposal. So you need to apply your knowledge of riba to this particular proposal. And if you can do this in all matters of life, then you are applying this deen in all aspects of your life. And you are living in accordance with hikmah. We also take from this ayah that Allah has a mashi'ah, a will. We find if you have been given knowledge and understanding of this deen, then you ought to thank Allah because this is a gift from Allah. We also take the importance of proper intellect, that the person who has proper intellect and understanding would take admonition from the ayat of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Many kuffar are clever and they have the intelligence of comprehension, however, they lack the intelligence which leads them to guidance. This is what we call the aqlul irshad. Irshad meaning to guide somebody. هذا والله أعلم.